Betiki Kola Yuha Ichichiab. This is Chase Iron Eyes. I want to say Ani, Buju, hello, good day to all my relatives who are tuning in, who are listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Again, my name is Chase Iron Eyes, and I've been essentially living in the greater Minneapolis St. Paul area since January 10th, right after the tragic incident involving Renee Nicole Good. And that is such a powerful moment in our collective history, in our shared history. And it deeply impacted my family and our hearts and intentions went out immediately to those within the Minneapolis St. Paul area who were struggling through and trying to figure out how to navigate that time, how to put the pieces together. And for all of our relatives out here who are making their lives, who are raising their families in the awesome state of Minnesota, in the Minneapolis St. Paul area, who were faced with existential challenges and threats to how a family conducted themselves prior to Renee Nicole Good and prior to the presence of immigration and customs enforcement. I know it's a lot. I know that we are going through a lot spiritually, and nothing is the same. Nothing will ever be the same. No man steps in the same river twice. And that's the kind of moment that for me and my family, who love the United States of America, who love our country, who love every single river, spring, and freshet and sacred site in what is now called Minnesota, and for my particular tribal nation into what is now called North Dakota and South Dakota and Nebraska and Montana, and some of the provinces to our brothers and sisters to the north, to Canada. We have a history that stretches back to time immemorial in the area of the Great Lakes, stretching out westward into the Bighorn Mountains in what is now called Montana. And that is, of course, the Ocheti Shakoi, or the Sioux Nation, the Dakota people, the Lakota people. And we've always had, an established and documented vested interest in all of the affairs that compose our collective and controverted history. It's not so much history; it's who we are. It's who we are as Minnesotans. It's who we are as Americans. It's who we are as Native Americans. It's who we are as people who are human beings who are seeking a better life and who are contributing to the overall well-being, cultural vibrancy, economic impact of the entire state and of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Now, my experience here, I came in from South Dakota by way of North Dakota. That's where I grew up. But my grandmothers are, of course, Dakota. And as you all know, the Dakota people, there's four tribal nations that are still here, but the majority of the Dakota people were exiled out of Minnesota in some of that controverted history. But I want to talk specifically about what I've been going through today in over the next hour via the Native American Patriot show. I'm an attorney. I'm a lawyer by trade. don't hold that against me. But I've been on the ground since January 10th, when one of the largest marches that has ever happened in Minneapolis, St. Paul, occurred that day, and it's an awareness march. It's a march that people need. People need to be in the streets. People need to see that their neighbors, their fellow human beings, their neighbors, that they care, and that we are all going through this together. The entire process that we're navigating, the traumatic process that we're navigating together, has various facets and iterations. But I came on the ground because we began to hear in the Native American community, we began to hear that ICE was targeting and illegally profiling Native Americans, that ICE was violating the United States constitutional rights of your average everyday citizen, your average everyday Minnesotan. And so I landed on the ground here. I drove in, and I'm staying with friends. I'm very grateful to my friends who've hosted me, and I think I've reached a point where you get to that point when you're a guest in the house, and your welcome doesn't wear out, but you're no longer not expected to do the dishes. You're no longer not expected to walk the dog and to contribute to the household effort. I think I've reached that point. I've been here long enough. I could vote in Minnesota, and it's a blessing to be here. So that I just wanted to tell a little bit about how I got involved and how I became part of the fabric that is collectively navigating through this very unprecedented and historic time. And I was very fortunate to be invited. Well, before we talk about me being invited to the Minnesota State Senate, I went back. I tried to go back to see my wife and my daughter, and I was there for a night, and we woke up the next morning, and we were hit with another tragic killing, the taking of life. And as far as we can tell, as far as the evidence bears out, the taking of nonviolent, peaceful life. Alex Preddy, a man who, by all objective and reasonable accounts, was attempting to help a woman who was being violently aggressed by ICE agents on Nicollet and 26th, right in that area there. And we had a very serious talk within my family, because I'm Native American, because my family is Native American. We don't look any different from the targets, the legitimate I guess targets, that if imagine yourself within the vernacular of a Christie gnome, for instance. The illegals and the aliens that they're targeting, which are actually indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere, who look phenotypically exactly like how I look and how my kids look. It's objective and reasonable for Native American people to be completely justified in our apprehension about potential interactions with ICE. In fact, those interactions have happened in our state here, in the state of Minnesota. So I'm talking to my wife, and she's a pediatrician. She's in the healthcare industry, and we have one daughter left in our home. Our other, children are young adults, and one of them is in school in Minnesota, goes to Concordia Moorhead. Shout out to the Cobbers. One of our sons wrestles for the great program at Concordia Moorhead. And so we have one kid who's a sophomore in high school. She attends a Jesuit campus on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And we had a very sobering talk about what ICE represents, the potential vindictive approach of somebody like Kristi Noem, who used to be the governor of South Dakota. In our tribal nation, the Oglala Lakota Nation, was the first to ban Kristi Noem. If you never heard that factoid, Kristi Noem was in fact banned by every single tribal nation that shares territory with the state of South Dakota. So Kristi Noem was effectively banned and banished from entering 20% of the state that she was governing. And so we have a history with the current director of Homeland Security. And me and my family came to the conclusion, we were sitting there at breakfast and we just heard about Alex Preddy, and we're going through it emotionally, spiritually. It's a dreadful, like a dark moment of the soul, because things don't feel the same. The constitutional republic that we know, that we knew, that we swore to defend and uphold, the constitution of which informs our very lives as Americans and Native Americans, things feel unstable. Like the foundation is beginning to slip, and I can see the trepidation in my family's eyes when we agree together. The women in my family tell me that I will be of more use to my family and protecting, the safety and integrity of our lives. I will be of more use to my family if I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul, defending America, defending the good people of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Minnesota, who did not ask to be targeted by, again, as an attorney, in what appears to me to be objectively and reasonably illegal conduct by federal enforcement officers, conduct that violates the United States Constitution. And you all remember, you took the same civics classes that I took, the same social studies classes that I took, U.S. government, American government. There are certain rights that we hold to be inalienable. That's the Bill of Rights. That's the right to free speech, right? We should be able to criticize whoever we want without fear of retribution, of political punishment. Doesn't matter what side of the imposed binary that somebody is what party they're on, whether it's red or blue. You should be able to criticize a red or blue president without fear that your profession or your reputation, or you're going to be doxxed, or you're going to be physically or cyber attacked or bullied. Those are rights that are supposed to be inalienable to every single American. The right to peaceably assemble, the right to be free from illegal searches and seizures. That includes illegal searches and seizures of your digital print, of everything you do on the smartphone. We are supposed to have privacy rights that are inalienable. But as you can see and I forget this gentleman's name, who's an American citizen, who's a member of the Hmong community in St. Paul. His home had a battering ram taken to it. And in the United States of America, in our constitutional republic, the home is supposed to be sacred. It is supposed to be inviolable. That is why some states have stand your ground laws. That is why Minnesota has a defend the castle doctrine, where there's no duty to retreat when when other people are conducting illegal activity into your home, if federal agents are showing up without proper warrants. Now, there's a difference between judicial warrant and administrative warrant. A judicial warrant is a warrant that is signed by an Article 3 judge. And Article 3 of the United States Constitution prescribes the juridical setup, the setup of the courts of our constitutional republic. Immigration courts are not Article 3 courts. And so the Department of Homeland Security or Immigration Customs Enforcement, enforcement and removal officers, those warrants that are only signed by their administrative structure are not valid judicial warrants. But you see, now these are federal agents that we're supposed to, in America, we're supposed to be able to depend on those arms and institutions of state power, which sometimes, includes the execution of violence within the color of law, within state power. We're supposed to be able to depend on them to follow constitutional order. We're supposed to be able to depend on them that they hold those same truths to be self-evident, that they also consider privacy within every Minnesotan's home to be an inviolable right, that there is supposed to be due process, Fifth Amendment due process, substantive due process, meaning basic equity and fairness, but also procedural. So if they have a valid reason and ICE claims that they're targeting, right? That they're seeking specific, nameable, known criminal elements. But if that's true, then why are they going to this Hmong gentleman's his house in St. Paul, battery ramming the door, and then transporting the man away from his home in his underwear in freezing temperatures, complete humiliation, while the man's grandson is left to the unknown? I think neighbors took the grandson. ICE gets down the road with this gentleman and realizes that they got the wrong man. Imagine for a second that happening to you, to your loved ones, to your children. This is the very fabric of the United States of America, the social contract, the tethers that bind me to every single other American citizen, regardless of their classification, whatever kind of classifications human beings have invented, race or religion or whatever way, a gender, all that stuff, right? There is a bond between every single human being that is called an American citizen. There is a sacred and inviolable bond that we've just kind of always expected was protected by rational human beings in leadership, in government, and that we could depend on the just and equitable administration of state power. The United States of America and every single state of our holy union. That is untenable at best and needs to be addressed right now at worst. Hello again, Kola Yuha Chichab Buju Ani. I want to say hello again to all my relatives. This is Chase Iron Eyes on AM 950. the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. And this is Native American Patriot Talk. And I'm so happy to jump back in. I was talking about the gentleman in St. Paul that was brutalized, whose home was brutalized. It was illegally entered. ICE admitted that they had the wrong guy. And the numbers are out that ICE has removed 3,000 people. And of that, it's some obscenely low number who are actual criminals. And the language that is used by ICE, by Homeland Security, is that they want to remove the criminals, the pedophiles, the rapists, and the murderers. And again, these are old tropes that this particular block relies on to foment and to instigate the fears and the insecurities that might exist within their certain demographic, to make a population feel licensed, or to effectively otherize human beings, and make some of us think that others are vermin. But if you're, as we see now, this is a topic for another show, but as we see with the Epstein files debacle, the continued and ongoing release of every single tranche of information that has been hidden from the American people and has been hidden from the world, we're going to find out another level of criminals and pedophiles and rapists and murderers. And that is a heavy, heavy subject for us to go through as Minnesotans and as Americans. Now, just to remind you, I've been on the ground since January 10th. And as a recap, I've been functioning and performing my duties as an attorney and making sure that no Native American who's profiled or illegally targeted, or even who's been arrested by ICE in functioning in their duties along with other Minnesotans as constitutional observers. We talked a little earlier about the inalienable rights, the rights that we're supposed to have, that are supposed to be inviolable by virtue of our birth as American citizens. And just to take you back even further, I don't even remember the month. The last 6 months have been a blur to me, because I remember when ICE was active in California, in Los Angeles, and then somewhere around that time, the Trump administration issued guidance, issued file in some pleadings. Whoever the Department of Justice counsel was, challenged the idea that even Native Americans should not or might not be entitled to birthright citizenship. There is nobody more American than American Indians. Like, we just full stop on that. What is America? We are America. Native Americans, we entered into sacred covenants with the founders of these great United States. If you go back in your lineage, and no matter who you are in our country, you go back in your lineage and say, yes, you are European American. You maybe you came on the Mayflower, like a good brother that I know. Maybe you came to Ellis Island. Maybe your people came to through Ellis Island. However you found your way here, Native America has always been ready to welcome you. Native Americans have always been willing to offer through trade, friendship, and even love and compassion. We've always been willing to offer a hand up and to recognize the United States of America as a fledgling and younger body politic as compared to Native America. I mean, more than 500 tribal nations who express their sovereignty in this soil that is now the United States of America and Canada in the entire Western Hemisphere and even globally. But Native Americans have fought on each side of every and multiple sides of every single conflict in what is now called the United States. And so when I talk about why do I call this show Native American Patriot Talk? It's because my people, I'm also a Sioux national. Ocheti Shakoi, Wichasha Hema Chayelo. My grandfathers at the advisement of my grandmothers entered into treaties with the United States. And Native Americans, through the various treaties going back to 1776 and prior to that, Native Americans have negotiated citizenship within and proximate to and adjacent to the United States in various ways. So when people like Stephen Miller call into question and challenge birthright citizenship of Native Americans, that is a signal that we have gone awry. We have gone far astray from whatever legitimacy, because everybody wants safety. Everybody wants peace. Nobody wants the criminals, the rapists, the pedophiles, and the murderers of any demographic, of any immigration status. Nobody wants that. We all want safe communities. But what we're seeing in Minnesota is not this surgical, precise, targeted, legal, and constitutional operation. No, that's not what we're seeing. Then tell me why two good American citizens were executed on camera in broad daylight. And there's more to be done. That is extremely traumatic for our children to see. And now we have a situation where ICE they're at least presenting and projecting the idea that they're demobilizing. If you all remember, and that's what I mean. I empathize. I truly empathize with my fellow Americans and with our people, our citizenry, those who are trying to put the pieces back together, because we just had to watch something tyrannical. And I won't, everybody knows that the Bill of Rights and the US Constitution exist to authorize every single citizen to prevent tyranny and to prevent fascism. And this is what we've been through. This is what we are going through. We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for a war to be declared on American families. We didn't ask for an attempted overthrow of constitutional order. Because what happens when federal agents who are supposed to uphold the law are violating the Constitution? What kind of situation does that leave MPD in? What kind of situation does that leave Governor Walton or Attorney General Ellison? What kind of situation does that leave our highway patrol in? Every single Minnesotan National Guard family. What kind of a situation does that leave us in? That is what we've been talking about for ever since Trump took office. We've been talking about a constitutional crisis. And at first, it was just, whether or not Trump was going to disobey the Supreme Court of the United States, which is no small matter. That is so foundational and archetypal to American constitutional sovereignty. We're talking about Marbury versus Madison, in which, the Supreme Court reserved to itself the power of judicial review, meaning that they would be the final arbiters. The Supreme Court would be the final arbiters of what would be considered law and order, what would be considered constitutional order. But for the people of Minnesota and other states too, I focus, we zero in directly on Minnesota because that's where I've been living. That's where I've been laying my head. That's where I've been greeting the sun. And it is not normal what we're going through. It is not normal to see federal officers violating the Constitution of the constitutional rights of American citizens. It's not normal to see people illegally entering the home of American citizens or showing up and pretending like they have a warrant, announcing very loudly that they have a warrant when it's only an administrative warrant. It's not normal for Native Americans or Black and brown people to be driving down the street and be completely afraid that somebody is going to apprehend them and check their papers. You all know where we've seen that kind of activity. And some of the media that I've done is with, for instance, Italian media. And they remember this woman that I interviewed with has a grandmother who remembers Benito Mussolini when Mussolini was alive. She was like a little girl. I don't know what the age is. It could be her great grandmother, whatever it is. Fascism is very fresh in their collective lived experiences. And they see what's happening in our country. They see what's happening in the United States of America, which is supposed to be and has the potential to be the shining city on the hill, right? To quote Ronald Reagan. That is our birthright and our potential to be what Martin Luther King dreamed we could be. To be the greatest country on the earth, the greatest experiment, the founding fathers. When I say we have a controverted history, I mean that those founding fathers are not phenotypically or biologically my founding fathers, but they are now because I'm fully cognizant of those rights that they expounded upon. And they were drawing from what they considered to be the brightest and most potent sources of law, of intellect, the Western canon, which flowed directly from the Enlightenment period and scientific supremacy period. And so they were doing what they could. They were doing their best. Were they creatures of their time? Of course. Was there a time where females were considered property and not allowed to vote or own their own bank accounts and have financial autonomy, and whose bodily autonomy is still at risk in being attacked? Yes. Yes. Was there a time when African brilliance were considered slaves, chattel property? Yes. Was there horrible things done? Yes. Were Native Americans considered subhuman or Saracen or pagan or barbaric or antithetical to progress and civilization? Yes. Yes. But I'm still an American. Nahakshi unkumpi. We are still here. And we've taken, just like Sitting Bull said, in this new road that is presented, if you see something good, you pick it up. If you see something bad, you leave it alone. You leave it be. So we have a duty and we have an obligation to create the reality that we want to see for our children. That's another Sitting Bull axiom. Let us put our minds together and see what life we can build for our children. So now let me go back to ICE and ICE announcing there's too many updates. And this is the first episode of Native American Patriot Talk on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. And the show will evolve, but I'm giving an update to all interested parties, all stakeholders who appreciate the gravity, who recognize the weight and the heft and the existential threat that is presented by a rogue and radical fringe that controls and arm an institution of American state power. And that legally and arguably, and to me, objectively and reasonably, is usurping, is criminally seizing that power and using it against American constitutional order, in executing it against American families, whether or not they have an appropriate guise to do that. And then for them, it's of course immigration, illegal immigration, and this is an issue that, of course, that side of the aisle dominated on. They were able to stoke enough fear that the hordes and the caravans, if you remember that rhetoric, there's too many things to pay attention to. This is what is called flooding the zone, and that's a Steve Bannon strategy to just hit the American people with so many abhorrent, intense challenges, threats, challenges, impositions of fascistic or tyrannical authority, the increase of the militarized police state, and to attack on every front, whether it's judicial, punishing states for their progressive views, and withholding funding from colleges, withholding federal funding from anybody who has the audacity to be American, to seek true American patriotic values, to respect each other as Americans, to know that our strength lies in respecting each other's unique and powerful lineages, histories, backgrounds, differences, but also, more importantly, our commonalities, the things that bind us as relatives. And that's, for as a Lakota person, that is a very sacred vow that we take when we create relatives. But I've been able to witness the trauma that Minneapolis has been put through, and because ICE is announcing a drawdown, and we have our ear to the street. So just because a cosplaying, Nazi or SS look at whatever he was trying to present, whatever image Bovino was trying to present, something happened, something shifted in their strategy because they pulled him out, and it's only because the good people of Minnesota stood in the power of their peace. The good people of Minneapolis, St. Paul didn't take the bait. These other forces, these tyrannical forces, are trying so hard to goad American people into violence because they control that realm. They have a monopoly on violence. If they can get you to commit violence, well then, it's RIP, or you're a political prisoner, or you're investigated. Your privacy rights are violated, like they're doing right now. Anybody who's criticized ICE, Christy Nome has got it's not a judicial warrant, but it's a warrant that she issued, the Department of Homeland Security issued, and some platforms like Meta, like others, are appearing to comply with it, meaning that they're giving our data. If you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram and you're posting, I stand with Minnesota, with the new the loon symbol. Isn't that such a powerful symbol? It united us all. And just for speaking freely, this is what I mean, that these inalienable rights, everything's in flux right now. We're literally renegotiating those terms through which we're willing to live our lives. The social contract, the social contract, and the federal contract, the contract between the state of Minnesota and the United States. So we have to think clearly. It's hard when you're in the fight. It's hard to pick your head up out of the scrum and see the forest, above the trees. And so there are things that can be done to prevent illegal activity when it's instigated by federal officials. We have to make sure that Governor Walz, that Attorney General Ellison have all the support from the private bar, from the scholars, from the activists or the intellectuals, and the people who recognize the threat that is posed by the destabilization of constitutional order. There are things that we can do, but we need to work together. Even if no matter what your political classification is, or whatever you think it is, there are certain things like tyranny that we should all be truthful about, and we should all seek out each other's perspectives on how to deal with something like that. Because and that could take the form of many in many forms. It could take many forms. For example, I want to just thank the Minnesota State Senate Committee on Federal Impacts. That might not be the full name, but it's a very important committee, because the state of Minnesota, not only the state, but every municipality, every city, every county, every NGO, every nonprofit, every organization, keep track of every single dime that you've spent, and how your scope of work had to change to respond to ICE's activity in this great state. Keep track of all of that, because I came from the state of North Dakota as well when the Dakota Access Pipeline was being pushed through. And the state of North Dakota sued the federal government for $38 million. The numbers that are being spent here to defend the republic, to defend American constitutional sovereignty, to defend the integrity and sanctity of the United States Constitution from ICE, has got to be in the hundreds of millions. What is that total economic impact? I don't know, but we need to keep track of that, because there will be a day of reckoning. We will have our day in court. We will hold every single ICE agent accountable. I mean, we could start there. We could start with a mask ban. Why? Isn't that the creepiest, the scariest, like a horror movie, right? Imagine your children driving down the road. They're coming back from basketball practice or wrestling practice or whatever. Here are now combat ready, jackbooted personnel in masks with no identifying insignia. Like, I talk to the Hennepin County sheriffs, not all the time, but there's a Dakota landback camp happening near Fort Snelling. And so I talked to the Hennepin County sheriffs, as a legal advisor. And what I noticed about the Hennepin County sheriffs, for one, they're not wearing masks. They're not wearing balaclavas or shiesties. They're not wearing a hyper militarized kit. You know what? These Hennepin County Sheriff's Department personnel don't have masks on. They look you in the eye. They're friendly in their intake, in their process, and they have names. They have name badges. So we as Minnesotans, as people who are going through this together, need to not let the momentum stop. Just because their ICE is announcing drawdowns, just because hopefully we can recover economically from all of the depredations that have been inflicted upon the entire state of Minnesota. I mean, I don't even know the numbers on immigrant businesses, like in on Lake Street, for instance. But through the Minnesota committee, which is I can't remember the woman who chairs it, but Rachel Carlson is the person that I received an invite from, and I believe she's an advisor to the majority leader. And it's I had the opportunity to hear a bunch of testimony. Chairman or Chairwoman Port, sorry, Chair Port. But I remember some of the committee members, like Senator Dibble, um, Senator May Quaid. I remember the people who looked me in the eye, and who we collectively. And I know, I don't want to make such a sharp distinction on political identity, because I personally feel there should be more than just a binary in that regard. But progressive values, I'm about that life. I am about that life, and we only have those rights that we are willing to assert and defend. And so I just want to thank the good people of Minnesota and the leadership of the DFL, and even the leadership of the other party, whatever I don't, they might be just called Republican in this state. But there are times when something so dramatic happens and so existentially challenging that we have to think as human beings and as Americans. There are certain times when we need to really, really think about what's set before us, because, like I said, just the tyranny and the fascism that we are experiencing to this day, right now, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, we need to not let that ever happen again. And that's going to take strategy. It's going to take complete follow-up from all aspects of Minnesota state operational and legislative authority. It's going to take maybe classifying ICE as high risk because of the complete disorder being wrought upon Minneapolis, St. Paul. Maybe hotels and rental operations, car rental operations, should be required to increase the insurance setup so that it's considered an inherently risky behavior. Maybe there can be checkpoints to make sure that agents who are here are required to be licensed if they're going to administer law in the state of Minnesota. We need to reinforce our rights to free speech, our right to peaceably assemble, our rights. Look at the press. Look at the nonviolent nine. There's so much going on right now. This minute, all eyes are on Minnesota, and we need now more than ever to stand together. And as we continue to investigate and hold accountable every single violation of law in our state, we need to stand together. This is Chase Iron Eyes on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. Thank you.